Atlanta, Georgia, present day. The ballroom glittered with wealth and influence. Crystal chandeliers reflected off polished marble floors, and the low hum of elite conversation filled the air as servers moved gracefully between tables dressed in white linen. This wasn't just another charity gala. This was the kind of event where power shook hands quietly, where reputations were built with a smile and destroyed with a whisper. And standing near the edge of it all was Imani Roberts. She adjusted the delicate bow on her daughter's dress, smoothing the soft fabric with careful fingers. Zuri, 4 years old and full of curiosity, looked up at her mother with wide brown eyes. "Mommy, can I have one cupcake now?" Zuri whispered, pointing toward a towering dessert display. Imani smiled, warm but firm. "After dinner, baby. Promise." She straightened, shoulders back, chin lifted, the posture of a woman who had earned her place here. Imani wasn't just a guest tonight. She was the owner of Zuri's Kitchen, the catering company everyone had been praising since the first appetizer touched a plate. 4 years ago, she had been struggling to afford diapers. Tonight, her name was on the event program. Self-made, independent, unbreakable, or so she thought. Her gaze drifted across the room, and then stopped. At the front of the ballroom, a tall white man stepped up to the podium. His tailored tuxedo fit him perfectly. His presence alone quieted the room. The MC announced his name, and the crowd responded with applause that carried weight. "Please welcome tonight's keynote speaker, CEO of Whitman Holdings, Spencer Whitman." Imani's breath caught. Her fingers tightened around her clutch. Spencer Whitman, the man who once told her that keeping her baby would cost her everything. 4 years vanished in a single heartbeat. There he was, older, sharper, more polished than ever. His ash-blonde hair was neatly styled, his posture confident, his blue eyes scanning the crowd as he prepared to speak about generosity, community, and giving back. The irony hit her hard. Zuri tugged at her hand. "Mommy," Imani swallowed, forcing herself to breathe. "I'm okay," she said softly, though her chest felt tight. She wasn't okay, because the last time she had seen Spencer Whitman, he had been standing in her apartment, holding a check, asking her to erase the life growing inside her. And now fate had placed him directly in front of her, with that very life standing beside her. Spencer began his speech, his voice smooth and practiced, but then his eyes shifted. They moved across the room and locked onto Imani. His words stopped mid-sentence. The silence was instant. He stared at her like he'd seen something impossible. Imani felt it, that sharp unwanted pull in her chest, but she didn't look away. She refused to shrink. She rested a protective hand on Zuri's shoulder, grounding herself. Zuri looked up at the man on the stage, then back at her mother. "Mommy, why is he looking at us?" Imani didn't answer, because Spencer's gaze had dropped down to Zuri. His face changed. Color drained from it. His confident stance faltered, just slightly, but enough for Imani to notice. Enough for the room to feel different. His eyes moved back and forth between mother and child, his expression tightening as realization struck him with full force. Curly hair, the shape of her nose, those eyes. His eyes. Spencer cleared his throat and finished his speech quickly, his voice no longer steady. The applause came again, but it sounded distant now, like it belonged to another world. Before Imani could turn away, before she could disappear into the crowd, like she had 4 years ago, Spencer stepped down from the stage and walked straight toward her. Her heart pounded. Zuri clutched her hand. "Mommy, who is that?" Imani lowered herself slightly, keeping her voice calm. "Someone from my past," she said. "Stay close to me." Spencer stopped in front of them. Up close, the years hadn't softened him. They'd sharpened him. But the moment his eyes met Zuri's again, all that polish cracked. He opened his mouth. No words came out. Imani met his stare evenly. No fear, no apology, just truth in her eyes. "Hello, Spencer," she said, her tone controlled, steady. "Long time." His voice finally found its way back. "Imani." His gaze dropped to the child again. "Is she?" Imani didn't answer him. She didn't need to, because the truth was standing right there between them, breathing, blinking, alive. 4 years ago, he tried to make her disappear. Tonight she stood in front of him, successful, dignified, and holding the daughter he never thought he'd see. And in that moment, under the glow of wealth and influence, Fate shifted its weight. Bestie. Before we go any further, pause right here and drop a comment. Do you believe a man who once turned his back deserves a second chance? Like this video if you believe strength looks like survival. Share it with someone who's had to rebuild alone. And subscribe, because this story is just getting started. The space between Imani and Spencer felt heavy, stretched thin by years of things never said. Around them, the gala continued as if nothing unusual had happened. Soft music played. Laughter rose and fell. Glasses clinked. But for Imani, the room had narrowed to just 3 people. Herself, Spencer Whitman, and the child whose small fingers were now curled tightly around her hand. Spencer broke eye contact first. He knelt slowly, lowering himself to Zuri's height, his movements careful. Unsure, like he was afraid one wrong move would shatter the moment. "Hi there," he said gently, voice quieter than it had been on stage. "What's your name?" Zuri glanced up at her mother, eyes searching for permission. Imani hesitated for a split second, then gave a small nod. "Zuri," the little girl answered. "I'm 4. Spencer inhaled sharply. 4. The number landed hard. He forced a smile, though it trembled. "That's a beautiful name," he said. "I'm Spencer." Zuri tilted her head. "You talk funny," she said honestly. Imani almost smiled despite herself. Spencer let out a soft breath that might have been a laugh, might have been something else entirely. "I guess I do," he replied. He stood, eyes lifting back to Imani. He stopped, swallowing. "Can we talk? Somewhere quieter?" Imani studied him. 4 years ago, he had controlled the conversation. Tonight, she did. "All right," she said evenly, "but not here." She guided Zuri toward the terrace doors, Spencer following a step behind. The moment they stepped outside, the noise softened. Cool night air brushed against their skin. String lights glowed overhead, casting a calm contrast to the storm inside Imani's chest. She adjusted Zuri on her hip as the little girl rested her head against her shoulder, suddenly tired. Spencer stood there, hands at his sides, no longer the confident executive. Just a man standing in front of the consequences he once ran from. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I swear, I didn't know." Imani turned to face him fully. "You didn't know because you didn't want to," she replied. Her voice was calm but firm. "You made it very clear back then that knowing wasn't your priority." He flinched. "I was scared," he admitted, "and wrong. About everything." Imani exhaled slowly, steadying herself. "You don't get to summarize 4 years with one sentence, Spencer." Zuri shifted in her arms, murmuring softly. Imani instinctively rocked her, grounding herself in the familiar rhythm of motherhood. "You told me my life didn't fit yours," she continued. "You told me I would ruin everything, and then you tried to pay your way out of it." Spencer lowered his head. "I hate that version of myself," he said. "I think about that night more than you know." Imani met his gaze, and I lived with it. Silence followed, not uncomfortable, but honest. Finally, Spencer spoke again. "She looks happy," he said softly, eyes drifting to Zuri. "You did that. Alone?" "Yes," Imani replied. "I did." Something shifted in his expression. Admiration, regret, maybe both. "I don't deserve to ask this," he said, "but I need to. Is she mine?" Imani didn't answer right away. She looked down at her daughter's peaceful face, at the soft rise and fall of her chest, at the life she had protected with everything she had. "Yes," she said, "she is." Spencer closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. "I missed everything," he whispered. "You did," Imani agreed, "and that's something you'll have to live with." He nodded, accepting it. "I'm not here to make excuses. I just want to know if there's any way forward." Imani held his gaze, unwavering. "There is," she said, "but it won't look like what you're used to." He straightened. "I'll take whatever that looks like." She studied him for a long moment. "For now," she said, "you walk away tonight. You let me decide what happens next. And you understand that my daughter's safety and peace come before your guilt." Spencer didn't hesitate. "I understand." Imani turned back toward the doors. "Good," she said, "because this time, I'm not the one asking for permission." She stepped inside, carrying Zuri with quiet strength. Spencer remained outside, watching them go, not chasing, not calling out. For the first time in his life, he understood that love wasn't something you controlled. It was something you earned. Spencer stayed on the terrace even after Imani disappeared back into the ballroom. He didn't move because he didn't trust his legs. The night air felt colder than it should have, like Atlanta had decided to remind him he wasn't in control anymore. He stared at the glass doors where Imani had gone, watching shadows drift across them. Guests laughing, servers gliding, a world continuing without permission from his panic. His hands were clenched so tightly that his fingers ached. 4. That single number bounced in his skull like it had nowhere to land. He'd spent years pretending he had made a hard choice for the greater good. He'd told himself the lie so many times that it became routine, something he could carry in a suit pocket next to his phone and cufflinks. But none of his clean excuses could survive the sight of Zuri's face. Her curls, her stare, her calm, unafraid little voice, and those eyes. His eyes. A sharp wave of guilt hit him so fast he had to grip the stone railing to steady himself. He looked down at the city lights below the terrace and whispered to no one, "What did I do?" He remembered being on that stage just minutes earlier, delivering practice lines about community and responsibility. He remembered the applause, the smiling faces, the investors who wanted a photo, the board members watching his every blink. Then he saw Imani, and everything inside him split. His throat had locked. His tongue had frozen. He had felt his body betray him in public, his confidence cracking right where everyone could see. He tried to replay it. He tried to find a version of the moment where he hadn't looked, where he hadn't noticed, where he could have finished his speech without his heart being dragged out of his chest. But he did look, and now there was no going back. Spencer dragged a hand down his face. His eyes burned. He could still hear Imani's voice from years ago, quiet and shaking, asking him if he meant what he said. He had meant it because he was afraid. Afraid of his father. Afraid of his name being dragged into gossip columns. Afraid of the board. Afraid of losing the life that had been handed to him. And in exchange, he demanded she lose hers. Now fate had brought him face to face with the one thing he thought he could erase, and it was standing in a tiny dress asking for cupcakes. He stared at the doors again, desperate to go inside, desperate to follow, desperate to say something that could fix anything. But Imani's words stopped him. "You walk away tonight. You let me decide what happens next." He exhaled slowly. For the first time in a long time, he listened. He forced his feet to move, slowly, not toward the ballroom, but away from it, back down the hall, past framed photos of gala donors and polished decor. His phone buzzed twice. He didn't check it until he reached the quieter corridor. A message from his assistant. "Board members from Langston Corp are asking where you went." Spencer stared at the screen. Langston Corp. Investors. Deals. The world he'd once used as a shield. He typed back with steady fingers. "Tell them I'm unavailable tonight. Reschedule." His assistant replied instantly. "They'll be furious. Your father." Spencer stopped reading. He put the phone in his pocket like it was nothing. Because for the first time, the fear that used to run his choices didn't feel bigger than the truth. He had a daughter, and he had no idea how to live with what he'd done, unless Imani gave him a way forward. Inside the ballroom, Imani didn't rush. That was her first act of power. Her instincts had screamed to grab Zuri and leave the moment Spencer's eyes found them, but she refused to let panic lead her. She walked with control through the crowd, nodding at guests who complimented the food, thanking them politely like nothing in her world had shifted. Zuri's head rested heavy on her shoulder now. Her small arms looped around Imani's neck, half asleep and trusting. Imani kept her face smooth, but her body felt like a tight wire stretched too far. Tasha appeared near the service area, eyes widening the second she saw Imani's expression. "Ma'am?" Tasha asked softly, professional but worried. "Everything okay?" Imani adjusted Zuri and lowered her voice. "I need you to cover the floor for 10 minutes. Tasha glanced toward the terrace doors. "That him?" Imani didn't answer with a name. She didn't need to. Tasha's mouth tightened. "You want me to call security?" Imani shook her head. "No, not unless he crosses a line." Tasha leaned closer. "You good to drive?" "I'm good," Imani said, though her heartbeat disagreed. She moved toward the hallway leading to the coat check and staff entrance, aiming for the quiet exit that would take her straight to the parking area. She had planned for this gala like a businesswoman. Timing, routes, staffing. She could disappear cleanly if she chose. But as she walked, her mind fought itself. One part of her whispered, "Leave. You owe him nothing. Protect your peace." Another part, smaller, quieter, dangerous, whispered, "Zuri will ask one day." Imani tightened her hold on her daughter. A male voice called from behind her, not loud, not commanding. "Imani." She stopped, not because she had to, because she chose to. She turned slowly and saw Spencer at the edge of the hallway. No stage confidence on him now. He looked like a man walking into a storm without armor. He held his hands open slightly, like he was signaling he wasn't here to grab or force or dominate. "I know you told me to walk away," he said. His voice was rough. "But I needed to be sure you're not leaving this building thinking I'm going to follow you to your car." Imani held his gaze. "You shouldn't be anywhere near my car." "I won't," he promised quickly. I needed to say one thing." Imani didn't speak. She let the silence pressure him. Spencer swallowed. "I'm not here to threaten you. I'm not here to control anything. I'm here to acknowledge what I did." Imani's jaw tightened. "Acknowledging doesn't change what happened." "No," he agreed. "It doesn't. But it's the only place I can start." Zuri stirred slightly, eyes fluttering open. She looked around, confused, then spotted Spencer. "That man again," she mumbled. Imani brushed her daughter's cheek. "Go back to sleep, baby." Zuri's eyes fought to close again. "He got blue eyes," she murmured, half asleep, like she was stating a fact about the sky. Imani's stomach flipped. Spencer's throat worked, like her child's words hit him harder than any accusation. He took a small step forward, then stopped himself before he got too close. "I'll do what you said," he told Imani, quietly. "I'll back off. I'll wait. But please don't disappear again. Just tell me how to do this the right way." Imani stared at him for a long beat, her face unreadable. Then she spoke, voice low and controlled. "You don't get the right way tonight. You get my way. And you get it only if I decide you've earned it." Spencer nodded, eyes bright. "Okay." Imani turned, continuing toward the exit. But every step felt heavier now, because she could feel the past rising up behind her, clawing at her spine, forcing its way into the present. And she knew exactly why. Because she could still hear his voice from years ago, sharp, desperate, ugly, saying words that made her blood turn cold. 4 years earlier, Atlanta had felt smaller. Not because the streets changed, because Imani's life did. Back then, she wasn't carrying a sleeping child in a ballroom. She was carrying hope in a cramped apartment, trying to hold it gently like it could break. She remembered the smell of Cajun pasta in her kitchen, the soft music playing from her phone, the way she had lit a cheap candle to make the room feel warm because she wanted the moment to be special. Spencer sat at her small table, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. For once, he looked like a man instead of a title. Imani had watched him laugh at something she said, and she had thought, "We can do this. We're real. This is real." When she told him, she did it softly. "Spencer, I'm pregnant." The smile vanished. It didn't fade. It fell. He stood up too fast, chair scraping the floor. "Pregnant?" he repeated, like the word didn't belong to him. Imani's hand went to her stomach, protective without even thinking. "I know it's sudden," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, "but we can figure it out." "We?" He started pacing. His face changed into something she didn't recognize. Panic, anger, calculation. "My father will bury me," he muttered. "The board will turn this into a circus." Imani blinked. "Spencer, listen to me. This isn't a headline. This is—" He spun toward her. "You don't understand what this will do." Imani's heart sank. "What it will do to you." Spencer froze. That pause told her everything. Imani's voice went quiet. "Say it. Say what you're thinking." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a checkbook. The moment she saw it, her stomach dropped. "Don't," she whispered. Spencer didn't look up. His pen scratched quickly. He tore the check and set it on the table like he was placing a business offer. Imani stared at the amount. It was more money than she'd ever held in her life. Her hands shook, not from excitement, from insult. "Spencer," her voice cracked. "What is this?" He finally met her eyes, and she saw the fear there. But fear didn't excuse what came next. "This can go away," he said. Quietly, cleanly. Imani stepped back like his words were a slap. "You're asking me to end my pregnancy," she said, voice trembling. "Like it's a mistake on a spreadsheet." Spencer flinched. "I'm asking you to understand what's at stake." Imani's tears filled fast, but her spine stayed straight. "What's at stake," she said slowly, "is a child." Spencer's jaw tightened. "If you do this, if you keep it, my father will come after you." Imani shook her head. "He doesn't even know me." Spencer's voice dropped lower, darker, like he was repeating something he'd been trained to believe. "He knows enough," Spencer said. "And if you have that baby, your family will pay for it." Imani went still. The room felt silent, like even the air refused to move. She stared at him. "You would do that?" Spencer's face twisted. "I don't want to. But it'll happen, and I can't stop it." Imani's voice turned sharp, clean, final. "You're lying." Spencer blinked. Imani stepped forward, grabbed the check, and tore it in half with shaking hands. Then again, and again. Paper fluttered to the floor like the last pieces of her trust. "Get out," she said, voice low and deadly calm. "Get out of my home." Spencer looked like he wanted to speak, to reach for her, to take it back. But he didn't. He walked out. The door closed, and Imani slid down onto the kitchen floor, one hand on her stomach, sobbing, because, in one night, she learned the hardest lesson of her life. A man can say he loves you, and still choose himself. That night was the reason she built walls. That night was the reason she survived. And now, 4 years later, the same man stood in the same city, staring at the child he tried to erase, asking for a path forward. Imani blinked hard as the memory faded, her steps slowing near the exit of the gala. Her throat felt tight. Her arms tightened around Zuri, and she whispered to herself, so quietly no one else could hear, "Never again." 4 years earlier, before heartbreak hardened her instincts, Imani Roberts believed in timing. She believed that when something felt right, it usually was. Her first week at Whitman Holdings had been overwhelming. The glass tower in downtown Atlanta felt like a world she had stepped into by accident. Polished floors, quiet authority, and people who spoke in measured tones like their words were investments. Imani came from a neighborhood where voices were loud, laughter spilled freely. And success was something you fought for with grit instead of inheritance. Still, she held her head high. Her mother's words stayed with her every morning. "You belong wherever you earn your place." Imani earned hers quickly. She worked in marketing, starting early and leaving late, absorbing every detail. Her ideas were thoughtful, grounded, and rooted in real people, not just projections and profit margins. That was how Spencer noticed her. At first, it was professional. He would pause during meetings when she spoke, ask follow-up questions, invite her to stay behind and explain her approach. He never spoke down to her, never dismissed her input. That alone made him different. One evening, after a long planning session, Spencer walked her to the elevator. "You see things clearly," he told her. "That's rare." Imani smiled politely. Compliments weren't currency where she came from. Consistency was. But Spencer kept showing up. Coffee left on her desk during late nights. Invitations to sit in on meetings she technically wasn't assigned to. Conversations that drifted from campaigns to music, to family, to life outside the building. She learned he grew up in Buckhead. Old money. Expectations pressed into his spine since childhood. A father who believed legacy mattered more than happiness. He learned she went to Spelman. That her grandmother taught her to cook. That she worked 2 jobs through school. That her faith in her people mattered deeply to her. The distance between their worlds should have stopped everything. Instead, it made them curious. Their first dinner wasn't planned. They were still in the office after 9, the building nearly empty. Spencer suggested takeout. Imani laughed and told him she knew a place that delivered food worth remembering. When the bags arrived, Spencer stared at the containers like they were artifacts. "This smells incredible," he said. Imani shrugged. "You've been eating bland food too long." They ate at the conference table, shoes off, jackets tossed aside. He asked about her childhood. She asked about his. For the first time, Spencer spoke honestly about the pressure he lived under. "I don't get to make mistakes," he said quietly. "Not real ones." Imani met his eyes. Everybody makes them. Some people just get better at hiding them. That was the moment something shifted. Their romance didn't announce itself. It slipped in quietly. Shared smiles, lingering looks, Long conversations that refused to end. They kept it private, not out of shame, but awareness. Spencer knew the scrutiny that followed his name. Imani understood what it meant to be the only black woman in certain rooms. They met late, took walks through the city, talked in his car, parked a block away from her apartment because she wasn't ready to invite his world inside hers yet. When he finally came to her place, he noticed the small details. Family photos, a framed church program, a handwritten recipe taped to the fridge. "This feels real," he said. "It is," she replied. They fell in love without drama, without declarations, just steady presence. And for the first time, Imani believed that love didn't need permission. The pregnancy test was pink. That was the first thing Imani noticed. Not fear, not panic. Pink. She sat on the edge of her bed, the small plastic stick resting in her palm, staring at it like it might change its mind if she looked long enough. Her heart beat fast, not from dread, but wonder. She pressed her hand against her stomach, breath catching. A life. Her mind moved quickly. She thought about timing, about work, about Spencer, about how unexpected didn't always mean wrong. For one beautiful moment she smiled. Then reality followed close behind. Spencer, his world was structured around control, image, perception, his father's approval, the board's expectations, the woman he was rumored to be engaged to someday, not because he loved her, but because it would make sense. Imani's joy dimmed. She paced the apartment, barefoot, the test still in her hand. She imagined his reaction, his face tightening, his silence stretching too long. But she also remembered the way he looked at her, the way he listened, the way he held her when she was tired. She decided to tell him honestly. That night, she cooked, not to impress, but because cooking steadied her. She chose his favorite dish, lit a candle, sat across from him at her small table. Spencer noticed immediately that something was different. "You okay?" he asked. Imani nodded, then shook her head. "I need you to listen." His smile faded. "All right." She took a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "I'm pregnant." The room went silent. Spencer didn't speak. He stared at her like the words hadn't landed yet. Then he stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. Imani's heart sank. "Say something," she said softly. Spencer ran a hand through his hair. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Yes." His breathing changed. Shallow, sharp. "This can't be happening," he said. "Not now." Imani leaned forward. "It is happening." His eyes darted around the room like he was searching for an exit. "My father." He stopped, swallowed. The board, the media. This will ruin everything. Imani's joy collapsed into confusion. "Spencer," she said gently. "This isn't about them. This is about us." He looked at her then, really looked. And she saw it. Fear. Pure, unchecked fear. That was when she knew. Spencer didn't sit back down. He paced. "This isn't how my life is supposed to go," he muttered. Imani felt something cold spread through her chest. "Supposed to," she repeated. He stopped. "You don't understand the position I'm in." Imani stood. "No, Spencer. You don't understand the position I'm in." She placed her hand on her stomach again. "This is a child," she said. "Our child." His jaw tightened. "I can't do this." The words cut deeper than anything else. He reached into his jacket. The sound of the checkbook opening felt loud. Imani froze. "No," she whispered. Spencer wrote quickly, detached, tore the check and slid it across the table. Imani stared at it. Her breath left her body. "You think money fixes this?" she asked, voice trembling. "This is the only solution," he said. Quiet, controlled, clean. Her hand shook as she picked it up. "This is your answer?" she asked. "Not support, not love. This?" Spencer's voice hardened. "If you keep this baby, everything you touch will burn. My father won't let it go. He will make sure you regret it." Imani stepped back like he'd struck her. "You would let that happen?" Spencer hesitated. That hesitation was enough. She tore the check in half, then again, and again. Paper scattered to the floor. "Get out," she said, voice steady through the pain. "Get out of my home." Spencer stared at her, shocked. "You're choosing this?" he asked. "I'm choosing my child," she replied. And I'll never forgive you for asking me not to." He opened his mouth, closed it. Then he left. The door shut. Imani sank to the floor, sobbing, not because she was weak, but because she had just learned the cost of loving the wrong man. That night, she chose herself. She chose her baby. And she walked away from everything he represented. Imani left her apartment before sunrise. She didn't pack much, just clothes, a few framed photos, and the quiet certainty that staying would only keep reopening wounds that refused to heal. The city felt different that morning. The streets were familiar, but her future wasn't. Her mother, Loretta Roberts, was already awake when Imani arrived at the modest house on the south side of Atlanta. Loretta didn't ask questions at the door. She didn't demand explanations or timelines. She pulled her daughter into a tight embrace and held her like she had when Imani was a child with scraped knees and broken hearts. "You're home," Loretta said softly. "That's all that matters." Imani didn't speak. She couldn't. She just nodded, tears finally spilling freely now that she was safe. Life slowed down after that. Not because it was easy, but because survival demanded focus. Imani slept in her old bedroom, the walls still painted the same color they'd been when she was 16. Every morning, she woke up to the sound of neighbors calling out greetings, the smell of coffee brewing, and her mother humming gospel tunes as she cooked breakfast. It grounded her. But reality didn't wait. Morning sickness hit hard. Some days she barely made it to the bathroom in time. Other days, she sat at the kitchen table staring at bills, wondering how she would make everything stretch far enough. Loretta noticed everything. "You don't have to do this alone," she reminded her. "Nobody here expects you to." And that turned out to be true. Her community showed up in quiet ways. A neighbor slipped grocery money into her purse without a word. Her aunt dropped off prenatal vitamins. Women from church stopped by with food and advice, not judgment. No one asked her where the father was. They only asked how she was holding up. That made all the difference. Still, there were nights when the weight pressed down hard. Imani would lie awake, one hand on her growing stomach, wondering how a man who once said he loved her could vanish so completely, wondering if she'd made a mistake believing that love could bridge differences in power, privilege, and fear. But every doubt was followed by resolve. She wasn't broken. She was becoming. Labor began late at night. Imani had just finished folding laundry when the pain tightened low and sharp, stealing her breath. Loretta was on her feet instantly, grabbing keys, phone, and the hospital bag they had prepared weeks earlier. The drive to the hospital felt surreal. Streetlights blurred. Time bent. Imani gripped her mother's hand through every contraction, grounding herself in the rhythm of breathing and faith. She didn't cry out Spencer's name. She didn't wish for him to be there. She focused on the life coming toward her. Hours later, as dawn crept into the sky, Zuri arrived. Small, strong, loud. The cry filled the room, cutting through exhaustion and pain like a promise. Imani held her daughter against her chest, tears streaming freely now, not from hurt but awe. "Hey, beautiful," she whispered. "I'm here." Zuri's tiny fingers curled around Imani's skin, instinctive and trusting. In that moment, everything changed. But joy didn't erase absence. Later, when the room quieted and Loretta stepped out to make calls, Imani sat alone with her child and felt the ache settle in her chest. This wasn't how she imagined motherhood. She had pictured a partner's hand in hers, someone sharing the weight, someone saying, "We did this." Instead, there was silence. Imani didn't let it steal her joy, but she didn't deny it either. She named her daughter Zuri, meaning beautiful, because even in struggle, beauty had found its way into her life. She made a vow then. "I will give you everything I have," she whispered, "even when it's hard." And it would be hard. The sleepless nights, the financial strain, the moments when Zuri cried and nothing seemed to soothe her. But Imani never once regretted her choice. Not when Zuri smiled for the first time. Not when she wrapped tiny arms around her neck. Not when she fell asleep on Imani's chest, warm and safe. Every sacrifice felt worth it. Imani needed income, not ambition, necessity. She started with what she knew. Cooking had always been her language. Her grandmother taught her early, standing on a stool beside the stove, learning flavors and patience. Food had always brought people together in her world, so she started small. Church events, family gatherings, neighborhood celebrations. She cooked after midnight when Zuri finally slept. She prepped meals with her baby strapped to her chest. She delivered trays with tired eyes and steady hands. Word spread. People talked about her food, not just the taste, but the care behind it. Soon, Zuri's kitchen had a name before it had a license. Imani learned quickly. She took free business workshops, asked questions, budgeted carefully. When she earned enough, she registered the business officially. Each milestone felt earned. There were setbacks, burnt dishes, canceled events, weeks where money barely covered expenses. But there was also growth. She hired help, expanded menus, catered larger events, built relationships with clients who respected her professionalism. Zuri grew alongside the business. She played on the kitchen floor, learned to say thank you early, watched her mother work with pride. Imani became something she never planned to be, a role model. Other single mothers asked for advice. Younger women asked how she kept going. She told them the truth. You don't wait until you're fearless, she said. You move while you're scared. She learned that independence wasn't isolation. That strength didn't mean silence. That community wasn't charity. It was survival. And she learned to love herself again, not as someone abandoned, but as someone who built a life anyway. The gala thinned slowly. Guests drifted toward valet stands and elevators, laughter fading into quiet goodbyes. The ballroom lights dimmed, leaving soft gold reflections on polished floors. Imani stood near the service corridor, Zuri asleep against her shoulder, waiting for Tasha to signal that the last trays were cleared. She felt him before she saw him. Spencer approached without haste, no entourage, no phone in hand, no practiced smile. Just a man walking carefully toward a moment he knew he didn't control. Imani, he said quietly. She turned. Up close, she noticed things she hadn't earlier. The tired lines near his eyes, the restraint in his posture, the way his hands stayed visible, open, non-threatening. I owe you an apology, he said. Not the polished kind, the honest one. Imani said nothing. He didn't rush. I was cruel, Spencer continued. Not because I meant to hurt you, but because I chose fear over responsibility, and I let power speak where love should have. Imani's jaw tightened. You don't get points for saying that out loud. I know, he replied. I'm not asking for points. I'm asking to be accountable. She shifted Zuri slightly, protective without realizing it. I spent years pretending that night didn't define me, Spencer said. But it did. Every day since, it followed me. He swallowed. I failed you, and I failed her. That was the first time he said it plainly. Imani exhaled slowly. You don't get to center yourself now, Imani said calmly. Spencer nodded. You're right. I raised her alone, she continued. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. I learned how to be strong when I was terrified. I learned how to build a life with no safety net. Her voice stayed steady, but every word carried weight. You don't get to walk back into that and expect forgiveness just because time passed. I don't, Spencer said. She studied his face. No interruption, no defense. That's the first honest thing you've said tonight. Imani paused, then added, but honesty doesn't erase damage. Spencer lowered his head. I understand. She didn't soften, but she didn't walk away either. There's something you should know, Spencer said. After you left, I did what my father wanted. I married Vanessa Hilton. Imani's expression didn't change. It lasted 11 months, he continued. There was no love, just image. I ended it myself. He met her eyes. That marriage showed me what a life without purpose feels like. Imani listened. I stepped back from the board, he said. I stopped chasing approval. I started asking who I was when no one was watching. He took a breath, and the answer kept coming back to you, to her. Imani's heart resisted, but it listened. I'm not asking to step into your life, Spencer said. I'm asking to step into hers, slowly, respectfully, under your rules. Imani felt the weight of the decision press into her chest. Zuri stirred slightly, her small hand curling into Imani's collar. Imani looked down at her daughter, then back at Spencer. You don't get instant access, she said. You don't get titles. You don't get promises without proof. Spencer nodded. I'll earn everything. She held his gaze. This is not about romance. This is about consistency. I understand. Imani took a long breath. For Zuri's sake, she said finally, I'm willing to see if you can be better than the man you were. Spencer's eyes filled, but he didn't touch her. He didn't reach. "Thank you," he said quietly. Imani added, "One step at a time." He nodded. "One step. Pause here, bestie. Do you believe in second chances? Comment below. Is Imani making the right choice? Like, if you believe change requires action, not apologies, share this story with someone wrestling with forgiveness. Subscribe, because the next chapter will test everything. Spencer did not rush into Zuri's life. That was the first thing Imani noticed. After the gala, there were no surprise visits, no oversized gestures, no attempts to buy affection. Instead, there was patience, measured, deliberate, and quiet. He texted first. "When would be a good time to see her? Only if you're comfortable. I can meet wherever you prefer." Imani chose public spaces at first. A park near her neighborhood, a library children's corner, a small cafe that welcomed kids and noise. She never left Zuri alone with him. She watched everything, and Spencer accepted every boundary without complaint. The first visit was awkward. Zuri stood close to Imani's leg, half hidden, studying Spencer like he was a puzzle she hadn't decided to solve yet. Spencer crouched down to her level but didn't reach for her. "Hi, Zuri," he said gently. "Your mom says you like coloring." Zuri nodded but didn't speak. Spencer pulled a small pack of crayons from his bag and placed them on the bench between them, then sat back. He didn't push them toward her. "They're for you," he said. "If you want." Zuri glanced at Imani. Imani nodded once. Slowly, Zuri reached out and took them. That was how it began, not with declarations, but with presence. Spencer showed up consistently. Same days, same times. Always on time, always prepared. He learned Zuri's routines, her favorite snacks, the way she hated loud noises but loved stories. He read to her, played on the swings, let her lead every interaction. Sometimes she talked, sometimes she didn't. He stayed anyway. Imani watched closely. She noted how he never spoke badly about the past, never blamed her, never pressured Zuri to call him anything. And when Zuri asked questions, because children always do, he answered honestly but simply. "Why don't you live with Mommy?" "Because I wasn't ready before, but I'm here now." That answer mattered. Imani didn't relax, but something inside her softened. Trust didn't arrive suddenly. It crept in during quiet moments. Imani noticed it the first time Spencer stayed late helping Zuri with a puzzle, even after she lost interest. He finished it alone, smiling like it mattered anyway. She noticed it when he remembered Zuri's preschool recital and rearranged his schedule without being asked. She noticed it when Zuri scraped her knee and cried, not for Imani, but for him. "Spencer," Zuri sobbed. He froze for half a second, startled by instinct, then scooped her up carefully, looking to Imani for permission even in the panic. Imani nodded. He held Zuri firmly but gently, whispering comfort, rocking her until her tears slowed. Imani felt something tighten in her chest. Not jealousy, recognition. This was the man he could have been. She started leaving the room sometimes, just briefly, standing nearby but not hovering, watching from a distance. And Spencer never overstepped. He didn't treat Imani like an obstacle. He treated her like a partner. One evening, after Zuri fell asleep on the couch during a movie, Spencer helped Imani clean up quietly. "She's incredible," he said softly. Imani nodded. "She is. I wish I had been worthy sooner," he added. Imani didn't respond, but she didn't disagree either. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant seeing reality clearly, and reality was changing. The tension with Reginald Whitman was inevitable. Spencer didn't hide his priorities anymore. He left work early, missed dinners, declined meetings that conflicted with Zuri's schedule. Reginald noticed. "You're losing focus," his father said during one tense lunch. "This company demands sacrifice." Spencer met his gaze calmly. "I've already sacrificed enough. You're choosing them over your legacy." "No," Spencer replied. "I'm choosing my family." That conversation changed everything. Spencer moved out of the family estate, took a reduced role, stepped away from decisions that consumed his life before. The world didn't end. In fact, it steadied. Meanwhile, Zuri blossomed. She started asking when Spencer would come, drew pictures with 3 figures holding hands, introduced him proudly to her teachers. One afternoon, while they were baking cookies together, Zuri looked up at him, flour on her cheeks. "Daddy," she said casually, like it had always been true. The room stopped. Spencer froze, breath caught in his chest. His eyes filled instantly. "Yes?" he managed. Zuri smiled. "Can you help me stir?" He nodded quickly, voice thick. "Always." Imani watched from the doorway, heart full and aching all at once. This was real. Not perfect. Not easy. But real. Spring arrived gently in Atlanta. Trees near Piedmont Park wore fresh green leaves, and the walking paths, filled with families, joggers, and laughter carried by the breeze. Imani liked this time of year. It felt honest, no extremes, just steady warmth. She walked slowly beside Spencer, Zuri skipping ahead with a small bag of breadcrumbs for the ducks by the lake. The three of them had fallen into a rhythm over the past months, one built on predictability and trust. Spencer never tried to rush it. He showed up when he said he would. He listened more than he spoke. Imani noticed everything. Zuri ran back toward them, breathless. "Mommy, Daddy, they're waiting." Spencer smiled at the word, like it was still a gift he hadn't unwrapped fully. He met Imani's eyes briefly, checking, always checking. She nodded. They reached the water's edge. Zuri scattered crumbs, giggling as ducks gathered. Spencer crouched beside her, pointing out the smaller ones, explaining patiently why they shouldn't throw too much food at once. Imani watched from a bench. She thought about how different this felt from the life she once imagined. There were no grand gestures, no luxury framing this moment, just presence. And somehow, that mattered more. Spencer stood and walked back toward her. His hands were steady, but his breath wasn't. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked softly. Imani nodded, rising. Zuri stayed by the lake, focused on her task. They stopped under a tall tree. The city noise faded into background hum. Spencer didn't kneel right away. "I've rehearsed this 1,000 times, he said quietly, and none of those versions felt right. Imani held his gaze, calm and open. "I won't talk about regret," he continued. "You know that already. I won't promise perfection. I can't." He reached into his pocket, then stopped himself, letting his hand fall. "What I can promise is consistency, showing up, choosing you and Zuri every single day, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially then." Imani felt her chest tighten, not with fear, but recognition. Spencer lowered himself to one knee. The world seemed to pause, not in drama, but respect. "Imani Roberts," he said, voice steady now. "You built a life from the ground up when I walked away. You taught me what strength looks like without cruelty. I don't want to stand beside you as someone trying to control the future. I want to stand with you as someone who earns his place in it." He opened a small box. Inside was a simple ring, elegant, understated. No excess, just meaning. "Will you marry me?" he asked, "and let us build our family with honesty, patience, and respect?" Zuri turned at the sound of silence. She looked from Spencer to Imani, eyes wide. "Mommy," she asked softly. Imani's breath caught. Imani didn't answer immediately, not because she was unsure, but because she was present. She looked at Spencer, really looked at him. Not the man he had been, not the man others saw, but the man who learned how to wait, how to listen, how to change without applause. She thought about the nights she cried alone, the mornings she pushed forward anyway, the child beside the lake who now knew love without confusion. Spencer didn't speak. He didn't plead. He stayed where he was. Imani exhaled slowly. "Yes," she said. The word landed softly, but it carried years of meaning. "Yes, I will." Spencer's breath broke free in a shaky laugh. He rose slowly, careful, like he didn't want to rush the moment. He slid the ring onto her finger with reverence. Zuri ran toward them. "You said yes," she shouted, wrapping her arms around both of them. Imani laughed through tears. "I did." Spencer knelt again, not for a proposal this time, but for Zuri. "Would it be okay," he asked gently, "if I keep being your daddy?" Zuri grinned. "You already are." Spencer pulled her into a hug, eyes wet. Imani watched, heart full and steady. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was something better. They sat on the bench together, Zuri between them, the ring catching light through the leaves. Spencer squeezed Imani's hand. "We'll do this your way," he said. "Our way." She nodded. "That's the only way." They talked quietly about logistics, not dreams disconnected from reality, but plans rooted in it. Living arrangements, school schedules, work boundaries. Nothing felt forced. That was how Imani knew. The planning started slowly. Imani insisted on it. No rushing, no pressure, no spectacle. They met families carefully. Spencer's mother welcomed Imani with warmth that felt genuine, relieved even. Reginald stayed distant, but Spencer no longer bent himself to earn approval. Loretta was cautious but fair. "He's shown up," she said to Imani one evening. "That matters." They planned a wedding that reflected truth, a church that held Imani's memories, music that honored her roots, food that told her story. Spencer wanted every part of it to feel earned, not inherited. Zuri helped choose colors, insisted on being part of everything, drew pictures of the ceremony with stick figures holding hands. Imani expanded Zuri's kitchen further, balancing work and planning without losing herself. Spencer adjusted his career again, choosing flexibility over status. They argued sometimes. They listened always. They didn't erase the past. They learned from it. On a quiet night weeks later, Imani sat on the porch with Spencer, the city distant, the future clear. "We're not starting over," she said. "No," Spencer replied. "We're continuing." That felt right. Mornings in the house were no longer quiet. Imani woke to the sound of small feet running down the hallway, Zuri's laughter echoing as she raced Spencer to the kitchen. Some days she won. Some days she didn't. Either way, she always demanded pancakes afterward. The baby boy, named Malik, usually stirred just as the sun filtered through the windows, his soft cries pulling Spencer from whatever he was doing without hesitation. Spencer learned quickly how to move through the house quietly, how to warm bottles without waking everyone else, how to rock Malik back to sleep while humming tunes he didn't even remember learning. Imani watched it all with a calm sense of gratitude, not because life was perfect, but because it was honest. Spencer didn't perform fatherhood, he lived it. School drop-offs, parent meetings, doctor appointments, bedtime stories where Zuri corrected him if he skipped a page. "Daddy, you missed a part," she'd say seriously. He always went back. Imani's family noticed. Loretta no longer watched Spencer with guarded eyes. She invited him into conversations, asked his opinion, trusted him with errands that mattered. Family dinners became fuller, louder, easier. One evening, as Zuri sat between her parents doing homework, Loretta leaned over and whispered to Imani, "He's here, not visiting, here." That mattered. Spencer wasn't just accepted, he was woven in. He helped Imani's uncle fix a broken fence, showed up early for church fundraisers, sat through long family stories without checking his phone. When Malik was baptized, Spencer stood beside Imani proudly, his hand steady on her back. Zuri looked at them during the ceremony and smiled, secure in the knowledge that her world was whole. For Imani, that was everything. The panel was held in downtown Atlanta, inside a modern conference hall filled with entrepreneurs, students, and small business owners. Imani stood backstage adjusting her blazer, breathing steadily. Spencer stood nearby, Malik cradled against his chest in a carrier, Zuri holding his free hand. "You ready?" Spencer asked softly. Imani smiled. "I've been ready for years." When she stepped onto the stage, the applause surprised her, not because it was loud, but because it was sincere. She spoke plainly, about starting with nothing, about building Zuri's kitchen while holding her baby on one hip, about learning to trust herself when everything else felt uncertain. She didn't mention betrayal by name. She didn't need to. Her strength told the story. Spencer watched from the audience, pride written openly on his face. Zuri leaned forward in her seat, whispering to Malik as if he could understand. "That's Mommy," she said. After the panel, women approached Imani, some young, some older, all asking how she kept going. Imani answered honestly. "I didn't wait for my life to be perfect," she said. "I worked with what I had." Later that night, as they walked back to the car, Spencer spoke carefully. "There's room to grow Zuri's kitchen," he said. "Not bigger, stronger, training programs, community kitchens." Imani nodded. "I've been thinking the same." They planned together, not as CEO and assistant, not as savior and survivor, as partners. Years passed with steady purpose. Zuri grew into a confident child who knew her story but wasn't defined by it. Malik toddled behind her, learning by example. Imani taught them both the same lessons. That love isn't proven by words alone. That forgiveness is a choice, not an obligation. That resilience is built one decision at a time. Spencer listened as much as he spoke. He modeled accountability, without shame. When he made mistakes, he owned them. The family wasn't perfect, but it was real. On a quiet evening, Imani sat on the porch watching her children play, Spencer beside her. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" he asked. She nodded. "Sometimes, but not with regret," he added. "No," she said. With clarity, Imani rested her head against his shoulder. Their life wasn't built on what they lost, but on what they chose to keep. Every challenge can birth a blessing, not because pain is necessary, but because courage transforms it. With faith, perseverance, and an open heart, even the hardest moments can lead to growth, healing, and purpose. Love doesn't arrive perfect. It becomes strong when people choose to show up, again and again. And sometimes fate doesn't return what was lost. It delivers something greater than expected.